Vexhai stood on the observation deck of the massive Korthak war station, watching ships from dozens of different worlds move through space like glowing dots against the darkness. His 4 arms rested at his sides while his black eyes tracked each vessel with the practiced attention of a warrior who had seen 300 years of conflict. The Korthak Empire controlled more star systems than any other power in this part of the galaxy, and Vexhai had helped conquer most of them. The war station orbited above Confederation Prime, the political center where representatives from 47 different species gathered to make decisions about trade, territory, and war. Today was special because a new species was joining their group. Vexhai had been ordered to attend the ceremony, though he found such events boring. Politics meant little to a soldier whose job was winning battles. Through the tall windows he could see the ships of the Gorvani Empire with their massive hulls designed to intimidate enemies. The Zilithian vessels gleamed with advanced technology that could destroy entire fleets from incredible distances. The Morvek ships looked like floating fortresses covered in weapons and armor. Each species had earned their place in the Confederation through strength, wisdom, or resources that others needed. The newest members called themselves humans. Vexhai had read their files during the journey to Confederation Prime, and nothing about them seemed impressive. They came from a single world in a remote part of the galaxy, where few other species had bothered to explore. Their planet was small and covered mostly with water. They had no special abilities like the Korthak's natural armor, or the Zilithians' enhanced intelligence. Their technology was basic compared to most Confederation members. The humans had requested membership only 6 months ago, which was unusually fast for such an important decision. Most species spent years proving themselves worthy of joining the most powerful alliance in the galaxy. The speed of human acceptance puzzled many delegates, including Vexhai's own commanders. Some suspected the humans possessed hidden knowledge or resources they had not revealed. A soft chime indicated the ceremony was beginning. Vexhai made his way to the Great Assembly Hall, where representatives from every member species gathered in sections based on their home regions. The Korthak delegation occupied seats near the front, reflecting their military importance to the Confederation. Admiral Korath, the highest-ranking Korthak officer present, nodded to Vexhai as he took his position behind the main delegates. The hall was enormous, with a curved ceiling that showed real-time images of space outside the station. Thousands of beings filled the seats, their various forms creating a mixture of colors, sizes, and shapes that represented the diversity of intelligent life in their part of the galaxy. Some breathed oxygen like the humans, while others required special equipment to survive in the standard atmosphere maintained throughout the Station Chancellor Vrextos of the Morvek. Hegemony called the session to order, with his deep voice that echoed throughout the hall. The Chancellor was ancient even by Morvek standards, having guided the Confederation through wars, economic crises, and territorial disputes for over 2 centuries. His words carried weight that could change the fate of entire worlds. Today we welcome the 48th member species to our alliance, Chancellor Vrextos announced. The beings who call themselves humans have requested membership in our Confederation and have been found acceptable by the Review Committee. Their representative will now address this assembly. A section of the floor opened, and a platform rose from below carrying 2 figures. Vexhai leaned forward to get a better look at the first humans he had ever seen in person. They were smaller than he had expected, barely reaching the chest height of an average Korthak. Their skin was pale brown and looked soft compared to the natural armor most warrior species possessed. They wore simple clothing that appeared to offer no protection against weapons or harsh environments. The female stepped forward first. According to the files, her name was Yoo-Jin Kim, and she served as the primary diplomat for her species. She was young by human standards, perhaps 30 of their years, with black hair pulled back from her face and dark eyes that seemed to look directly at each delegate in turn. Her companion, Jinwoo Park, remained a step behind, but his gaze swept constantly across the assembled crowd as if memorizing every detail. "Honored delegates," Yoo-Jin Kim began, her voice carrying clearly throughout the hall despite her small size. "Humanity is grateful for this opportunity to join the Confederation of Worlds. We come not as conquerors seeking to expand our territory, but as a people hoping to learn from the wisdom and experience of our new allies." Vexhai found her words typical of weak species seeking protection under the Confederation banner. Many smaller civilizations had given similar speeches before being assigned to peaceful sectors, where they could contribute resources or knowledge, without interfering in military matters. The humans seem to fit this pattern perfectly. We understand that trust must be earned through actions rather than words, Eugene continued. Humanity is prepared to take on whatever responsibilities the Confederation deems appropriate for our capabilities. We ask only for the chance to prove ourselves worthy of the faith you have shown by accepting us into your alliance. Several delegates exchanged glances that Vexhai recognized as polite boredom. The Korthak warrior had heard dozens of similar speeches from species that eventually became minor trading partners or research specialists. Humans appeared to offer nothing unique to justify the attention their membership had received. The formal voting process was brief, since the decision had already been made in private sessions. Each species cast their approval in order of seniority, with the Korthak delegation voting third after the Morvek and Gorvani empires. Within an hour, humanity had officially become the newest member of the Confederation of Worlds. As the ceremony concluded, Vexhai watched the human delegates accept congratulations from various representatives. Eugene Kim smiled and spoke politely with each group that approached her, while Jinwoo Park continued his subtle observation of the crowd. Neither human showed signs of being overwhelmed by the significance of the moment or intimidated by the powerful beings surrounding them. During the reception that followed, Vexhai overheard conversations between different delegations about where to assign the new members. The consensus seemed to favor the frontier regions, where conflicts with pirates and raiders were common, but not serious enough to threaten major trade routes. It was a testing ground where new species could prove their worth without endangering important Confederation interests. The Bloodthorn Syndicate controlled several systems in that area, attacking merchant vessels and demanding tribute from smaller colonies. The Ravagers operated from hidden bases throughout the region, striking targets of opportunity before disappearing into uncharted space. These criminal organizations had been thorns in the Confederation's side for decades, but not enough of a threat to justify major military campaigns. Sending humans to the frontier made perfect sense to most delegates. If they survived, they would gain valuable experience and help reduce pirate activity. If they failed, the Confederation would lose little beyond some minor investment in establishing their colonies. Either outcome would provide useful information about humanity's true capabilities. As the reception ended and delegates began returning to their ships, Vexhai found himself wondering how long the humans would last in the dangerous frontier regions. Most new species required several years to establish stable colonies and effective defense forces. The criminal organizations operating in those areas had destroyed many attempts at settlement by more powerful civilizations. Still, there was something about the two human representatives that stayed in Vexhai's mind as he made his way back to the Korthak transport. Neither had seemed concerned about the challenges they would face or impressed by the military might of their new allies. They had accepted their membership with quiet confidence that suggested either remarkable courage or dangerous ignorance. Time would reveal which assessment was correct. For now, Vexhai was content to file his report and return to more pressing military duties. The humans were just another minor species joining an alliance they barely understood. Within a few years, they would either find their place as contributors to Confederation prosperity or disappear into the historical records as another failed attempt at galactic expansion. The Korthak warrior had no way of knowing that his entire understanding of strength and weakness was about to be challenged by the small, soft creatures who had just become his allies. 3 months after the humans joined the Confederation, Vexhai received his first assignment involving the new species. Admiral Korath had called him to the command center of their home base on Korthak Prime, where holographic displays showed the latest intelligence reports from across their territory. The blue light from the screens cast strange shadows on the Admiral's armored face as he reviewed data that clearly troubled him. Something unusual is happening in the frontier sectors, Admiral Korath said without looking away from the displays. The criminal organizations that have operated there for decades are disappearing, not retreating or changing tactics, disappearing completely. Vexhai studied the tactical maps floating in the air between them. Red markers indicated known pirate bases and criminal strongholds, while green dots showed Confederation colonies and trade routes. Over the past 2 months, dozens of red markers had simply vanished from the displays. The pattern made no sense according to normal military logic, Which forces are responsible for these victories? Vexhai asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. That is the problem, Admiral Korath replied. No major Confederation fleets have been deployed to those regions. The only significant military presence belongs to the humans, who were assigned 3 frontier systems to establish their first colonies. The Admiral activated a detailed report that filled the air with text and images. Vexhai read through the information with growing confusion. The Bloodthorn Syndicate, which had controlled smuggling operations in 6 systems for over a century, had simply stopped existing. Their bases were found empty, their ships captured or destroyed. Their leadership either dead or fled to unknown locations. The Ravagers, a notorious pirate confederation that had plagued merchant vessels for decades, had suffered similar fate. Entire fleets that had operated from hidden bases throughout the region were gone. The few survivors who had been captured by Confederation security forces spoke of attacks that came without warning and showed no mercy to those who resisted. How many ships did the humans deploy for these operations? Vexhai asked while continuing to read the reports. According to our records, they have fewer than 50 military vessels in the entire frontier region, Admiral Korath answered. Most are small frigates and destroyers, nothing larger than a light cruiser. Their total firepower should be insufficient to challenge even a single major pirate fleet. Yet the evidence was clear. Criminal organizations that had survived attacks by much larger Confederation forces had been eliminated by the humans in a matter of weeks. The speed and completeness of these victories defied everything Vexhai understood about military operations in contested space. Admiral Korath called up another set of reports that made the situation even more puzzling. Merchant captains traveling through former pirate territories reported that the space lanes were now completely safe. Trade ships that had required military escorts for protection were moving freely without any security concerns. The transformation was so dramatic that shipping companies were rerouting major cargo convoys through areas they had avoided for generations. What do we know about human military tactics? Vexhai asked, hoping to find some explanation for these impossible results. Very little, the Admiral admitted. Their representatives were polite but secretive about their combat doctrines. They claimed their military traditions were still developing and not worth sharing with more experienced allies. We assumed this meant they had no significant tactical knowledge. Vexhai pulled up the human personnel files he had reviewed months earlier. The military leaders assigned to the frontier regions included names like Captain Minho Lee, Commander Nayeon Cho, and Lieutenant Colonel Tai-Ho Shin. Their service records showed experience in conflicts on their home world, but nothing that suggested expertise in space combat or large-scale military operations. The most puzzling aspect was the complete lack of detailed battle reports. When Confederation forces engaged criminal organizations, the resulting conflicts typically lasted days or weeks and generated extensive documentation about tactics, casualties, and lessons learned. The human victories had apparently happened so quickly that there were no witnesses and very little evidence to analyze. Have we requested operational details from the human command structure? Vexhai inquired. Admiral Korath's expression showed frustration. Multiple times. They respond with brief summaries that provide no useful information. They claim operational security prevents them from sharing tactical details with allies who might be compromised by enemy intelligence networks. This answer frustrated Vexhai as much as it did his commander. The Korthak Empire had shared military knowledge with Confederation allies for centuries without compromising their security. The human refusal to provide details about their methods seemed either paranoid or deliberately secretive. More reports arrived daily that only deepened the mystery. A Zalithian research station that had been paying tribute to the Devourers for 15 years suddenly found themselves free from extortion. The Devourers, a species known for consuming other sentient beings, had abandoned their territories near human space without explanation. When Confederation scouts investigated their former strongholds, they found evidence of battles, but no clear indication of what had driven the cannibalistic aliens away. The Morvek hegemony sent diplomatic inquiries asking if the Korthak Empire was conducting secret military operations in the frontier regions. Other Confederation members suspected that one of the major powers was using the humans as a cover for their own territorial expansion. The accusations and suspicions were creating political tensions that threatened the stability of their alliance. Vexhai found himself assigned to investigate these mysterious victories personally. Admiral Korath wanted a detailed assessment of human military capabilities and an explanation for their unprecedented success against established criminal organizations. The mission would require Vexhai to travel to the frontier regions and observe human operations directly. As he prepared for the journey, Vexhai reviewed everything known about human culture and history. Their homeworld had apparently experienced frequent conflicts between different nations and groups. But these wars seemed primitive compared to the sophisticated battles fought between star-spanning civilizations. The humans had only developed spaceflight within the last few centuries, while most Confederation members had been traveling between stars for millennia. The transport ship that would carry Vexhai to human territory was a fast scout vessel designed for reconnaissance missions. During the 3-day journey, he continued studying reports from the frontier regions and trying to understand how such a seemingly weak species had achieved such dramatic military success. The ship's captain, a veteran Korthak officer named Zexhun, shared Vexhai's confusion about the situation. "In my 40 years of service, I have never seen criminal organizations simply disappear like this," Zexhun said during one of their conversations. "Even when they are defeated in battle, survivors usually scatter to other regions and rebuild their forces. These groups seem to have been eliminated so completely that no remnants remain." As they approached the frontier regions where humans had established their colonies, Vexhai prepared himself for whatever discoveries awaited. The mystery of human military success had become more than a simple intelligence-gathering mission. The reputation of every Confederation military force was being questioned because a species with primitive technology and no apparent advantages had accomplished what larger, more experienced armies had failed to achieve. The answers he found in human space would either restore confidence in established military doctrine or force the entire Confederation to reconsider everything they thought they knew about warfare. Vexhai suspected that neither option would be comfortable for beings who had spent centuries believing they understood the nature of power in the galaxy. Vexhai arrived in the Zirian system at the edge of human territory, just as the emergency signals began broadcasting across all communication frequencies. A Confederation research vessel carrying scientists from 5 different species had been trapped by a Ravager pirate fleet near the system's outer asteroid belt. The situation was exactly the kind of crisis that would normally require weeks of careful planning and coordination between multiple military forces. The research ship Soul Explorer was broadcasting desperate messages for assistance while 23 Ravager vessels surrounded it in a standard capture formation. The pirates were taking their time, confident that no significant military force could reach the isolated system before they completed their operation. Capturing a multi-species research vessel would provide them with valuable hostages, advanced technology, and intelligence about Confederation activities in the region. Vexhai observed the situation from his position aboard the Korthak scout ship Hidden Blade, which had arrived in the system only minutes before the crisis began. Captain Zexhun maintained their vessel at maximum sensor range, following standard protocols for gathering intelligence without revealing their presence. The pirates had not detected the small Korthak ship, allowing Vexhai to monitor their communications and tactical preparations. "The research vessel has minimal defensive capabilities," Captain Zexhun reported while studying the tactical displays. "Standard procedure would be to request immediate support from the nearest Confederation fleet and attempt to negotiate with the pirates while waiting for reinforcements to arrive." Vexhai agreed with this assessment. The Soul Explorer carried sophisticated scientific equipment, but only basic defensive systems designed to deter small raiding parties. Against a full pirate fleet with heavy weapons and experienced crews, the research ship had no chance of fighting its way to freedom. Any rescue attempt would require overwhelming force to break through the Ravager formation without losing the vessel they were trying to save. The nearest major Confederation fleet was 6 days away at maximum speed. Diplomatic negotiations might delay pirate actions for a few days, but the Ravagers were known for their impatience and brutality. The research crew had perhaps 48 hours before their captors decided to eliminate witnesses and steal whatever they could carry. Then, 3 human ships dropped out of hyperspace, At the edge of the system, Vexil, I stared at the sensor readings in disbelief. The human vessels were smaller than most Confederation military ships, with designs that favored function over the intimidating appearance preferred by warrior species. The lead ship identified itself as Seoul's Pride under the command of Captain Minho Lee. The other vessels were the destroyer Busan Strike commanded by Commander Nyeon Cho and the frigate Daegu Shield under Lieutenant Jinwoo Seo. 3 ships against 23, Captain Zexun observed. They must be planning to open negotiations or call for additional support. But the human ships did not slow down or attempt to establish communication with the Ravager fleet. Instead, they accelerated directly toward the asteroid belt, where the pirates had positioned themselves around their trapped prize. Vexhai watched in growing amazement as the humans approached what any reasonable commander would consider a hopeless tactical situation. The Ravager fleet detected the approaching human ships and immediately began repositioning to engage them. Their commander, a veteran pirate named Gorvek the Red, sent a mocking transmission challenging the humans to surrender before they were destroyed. His fleet had fought Confederation forces dozens of times and always emerged victorious through superior numbers and brutal tactics. The human response was immediate and shocking. Captain Minho Lee's voice cut across all frequencies with words that would haunt Vexahai for years to come.
Seoul's Pride to all vessels.
We are not here to negotiate. We are here to retrieve our allies. Any ship that threatens the research vessel will be destroyed. What followed violated every principle of space combat that Vexhai had learned during 3 centuries of military service. The human ships attacked without warning, without preliminary maneuvering, and without any apparent concern for the overwhelming odds they faced. They drove straight into the heart of the Ravager formation, like spears thrown by desperate warriors who had nothing left to lose. Seoul's Pride targeted the pirate command ship with precision that defied belief. Instead of engaging the heavily armed vessels at the formation's edge, Captain Minho Lee focused his entire attack on eliminating the enemy's ability to coordinate their response. His ship absorbed devastating damage from multiple opponents, but continued its advance until its weapons tore through the command vessel's armor and silenced its communications systems. Commander Nyeon Cho's destroyer attacked the Ravager support ships with equal determination. Rather than fighting a defensive battle that might preserve her vessel, she charged directly at targets that could provide supplies and reinforcement to the main pirate fleet. Her ship's weapons fired continuously even as enemy missiles exploded against its hull, creating massive damage that would have forced any rational commander to retreat. The frigate Daegu Shield performed the most impossible maneuver of all. Lieutenant Jinwoo Seo drove his small ship through gaps in the enemy formation that should not have existed, appearing behind Ravager vessels before they could react to his presence. His attack struck at precisely the right moments to disrupt pirate coordination and create confusion among ships that should have been working together to destroy the human interlopers. Within 20 minutes, the entire tactical situation had reversed. The Ravager fleet, which had been confidently preparing to capture valuable prisoners, found themselves fighting for survival against opponents who refused to behave according to any logical pattern. Their formation collapsed as individual ships tried to escape from human vessels that seemed to anticipate their every move. High realized he was witnessing something that challenged his fundamental understanding of military science. The humans were not winning through superior technology or greater numbers. They were succeeding because they approached combat with a mindset that treated acceptable losses and strategic retreats as concepts that simply did not exist. When Seoul's Pride lost its forward shields and took direct hits that penetrated its armor, Captain Minho Lee did not withdraw to a safer distance. Instead, he ordered his ship closer to enemy vessels so that his damaged weapons could still reach their targets. When Busan Strike's engines suffered critical damage that reduced its speed by 60%, Commander Nyeon Cho used the limitation as an advantage, positioning her ship to block escape routes that faster Ravager vessels might have used. The pirates began fleeing the battle individually as their coordinated attack dissolved into panic. Ships that had operated together for years abandoned their formation and ran toward the edge of the system, desperate to escape from human forces that seemed willing to ram enemy vessels rather than allow them to escape with their stolen cargo. When the engagement ended, 17 Ravager ships had been destroyed or captured. The remaining 6 vessels fled toward uncharted space, their crews spreading stories about human warriors who fought like beings possessed by death spirits. The research vessel Soul Explorer was rescued without a single casualty among its mixed-species crew. The human losses were equally shocking. Soul's Pride was barely functional, its hull breached in dozens of places and its crew working frantically to maintain life support systems. Busan's strike required immediate evacuation of its engineering sections due to radiation leaks that would have killed most species within hours. Daegu's shield had lost all offensive weapons and was operating on backup power that might fail at any moment. Yet the human crews treated these devastating casualties as acceptable outcomes. Captain Minho Lee's damage report was delivered in the same calm tone he might use to describe routine maintenance procedures. Commander Naeun Cho actually seemed pleased that her ship had survived long enough to complete its mission objectives. Lieutenant Jinwoo Seo was already discussing how to modify his tactics for the next engagement. As Vexhai watched human recovery teams work to repair their battered ships, he realized that everything the Confederation believed about warfare was wrong. Victory did not belong to those with the most advanced weapons or the largest fleets. Power in the galaxy belonged to whoever was willing to pay the highest price for their objectives. The humans had just demonstrated that they measured success by entirely different standards than every other known species. While others calculated acceptable losses and strategic advantages, humans simply continued fighting until their enemies were destroyed or they themselves ceased to exist. For the first time in his long military career, Vexhai felt something that might have been fear stirring in his consciousness as he contemplated what it might mean to face such opponents in serious combat. The reports continued arriving at Confederation headquarters with increasing frequency over the following weeks. Each new document that crossed Vexhai's desk told the same impossible story. Criminal organizations that had terrorized the frontier regions for decades were vanishing completely after encountering human forces. The speed and thoroughness of these victories defied every tactical manual ever written by military strategists across the galaxy. The Bloodthorn Syndicate had operated a massive smuggling network from hidden bases in the Corvani Nebula for over 80 years. Their ships carried illegal weapons, stolen technology, and enslaved beings to buyers throughout 12 star systems. 3 Confederation task forces had attempted to destroy their operations during the past 2 decades, but the pirates always managed to escape into the nebula's dense gas clouds where sensors could not track them effectively. Now the entire Bloodthorn organization had ceased to exist. Confederation patrols found their bases empty and their ships either destroyed or abandoned in deep space. The few survivors who were captured spoke of attacks that came from impossible directions and showed no concern for their own safety. Human forces had somehow tracked the pirates through sensor-blocking nebula gases and eliminated them in battles that lasted only hours, instead of the weeks such operations normally required. Admiral Korath called Vexhai to another briefing where holographic displays showed the latest intelligence from across human territory. The transformation of the frontier regions was so dramatic that shipping companies were rerouting major trade convoys through areas they had avoided for generations. Insurance rates for merchant vessels traveling through former pirate strongholds had dropped to the lowest levels in recorded history. The Confederation Council is demanding explanations we cannot provide, Admiral Korath said while studying reports that clearly frustrated him. Other member species suspect we are conducting secret military operations, using the humans as cover for our own territorial expansion. The political situation is becoming dangerous. Vexhai understood his commander's concerns. The Korthak Empire's reputation was built on their military expertise and strategic planning. When a seemingly primitive species achieved victories that the most advanced Confederation forces had failed to accomplish, it raised uncomfortable questions about everyone's capabilities. What do the humans say when asked about their methods? Vexhai inquired. They claim operational security prevents them from sharing tactical details that might compromise future missions, Admiral Korath replied. They offered to demonstrate their techniques through joint operations with allied forces, but refused to provide written documentation about their combat doctrines. This response intrigued Vexhai more than it frustrated him. Most species were eager to share their military knowledge in exchange for recognition and political influence within the Confederation. The human reluctance to discuss their methods suggested either dangerous paranoia or confidence that bordered on arrogance. Admiral Korath activated another set of displays that showed a new development. The situation has become more complicated. We have received reports of a significant threat emerging from the galactic core regions. An unknown force has destroyed 3 research outposts and 2 mining colonies in systems where no criminal organizations operate. The tactical data was disturbing. The attacks had been swift and thorough, leaving no survivors and very little evidence about the perpetrators. Long-range sensors had detected ships with technology that appeared decades ahead of current Confederation standards. Their weapons bypassed standard defensive systems, and their vessels moved faster than anything in known space. The Confederation Council has authorized a joint investigation mission, Admiral Korath continued. Multiple species will contribute forces to gather intelligence about this new threat. The humans have requested to participate, and the Council has agreed to include them in the operation. Vexhai felt his interest sharpen. A joint mission would provide the perfect opportunity to observe human military operations up close and finally understand how they achieved their impossible victories. Working alongside other Confederation forces would also prevent the humans from hiding their methods behind claims of operational security. I want you to command our contribution to this mission, Admiral Korath said. Your observations of their recent rescue operation make you the most qualified officer to assess human capabilities objectively. We need detailed information about their tactics, technology, and command structure. The mission would involve investigating a system called Zerion 7 where the most recent attack had occurred. 3 different Confederation fleets would converge there, including ships from the Korthak Empire, the Gorvani Republic, and the human colonies. Each force would be responsible for searching different parts of the system while sharing information about anything they discovered. Vexhai spent the next week preparing for the joint operation. He studied everything available about the mysterious attacks and the human forces that would be working alongside his ships. The human contingent would be led by Commander Taiho Shin aboard the cruiser Incheon Guardian, supported by destroyers Seoul Defender and Busan Protector, under Captains Hyunwoo Nam and Soyeon Jung. The human fleet looked unimpressive compared to the massive Korthak battle cruisers and the advanced Gorvani warships that would be participating in the mission. Their vessels favored simple, functional designs over the intimidating appearances that most military forces preferred. Nothing about their ships suggested they possessed the superior technology that might explain their recent victories. When the 3 fleets rendezvoused at the edge of the Zerion 7 system, Vexhai had his first opportunity to communicate directly with human commanders. Commander Taiho Shin appeared on the communication screen as a young man with serious eyes and a calm demeanor that reminded Vexhai of veteran officers who had seen extensive combat. Commander Shin, Vexhai said during their initial coordination meeting, our intelligence suggests the unknown attackers possess technology significantly advanced beyond current Confederation standards. How do your forces plan to engage such opponents if we encounter them during this mission? The human commander's response was delivered with quiet confidence that unsettled Vexhai. We will adapt our tactics based on what we observe about their capabilities. Humanity has learned that technological advantages can be overcome through determination and willingness to accept necessary sacrifices. This answer provided no useful tactical information, but something in Commander Taiho Shin's tone suggested he was completely serious about engaging technologically superior opponents. Vexhai had heard similar confidence from young officers who had never faced truly dangerous enemies, but the human commander's calm certainty seemed different. It carried the weight of experience, rather than naive bravado. The joint fleet began its investigation by sweeping through the outer system where long-range sensors had detected debris from the destroyed mining colony. The Gorvani ships used their advanced technology to analyze the wreckage, while Korthak vessels provided security for the operation. The human ships positioned themselves in a defensive formation that seemed designed to intercept any threats approaching from unknown directions. As they worked, Vexhai monitored human communications and was surprised by what he heard. Their crews discussed potential combat scenarios, with the same casual tone other species used for routine maintenance procedures. Pilots like Lieutenant Jian Lim spoke about ramming, attacks, and suicide runs as though such Extreme tactics represented normal operational options when Captain Hyunwoo Nam reported that his ship's weapon systems were operating at maximum efficiency. He added that his crew was prepared to continue fighting even if they lost primary power or life support systems. The matter-of-fact way he delivered this information suggested that surviving catastrophic damage was simply expected behavior for human military personnel. 3 days into the investigation, long-range sensors detected incoming ships at the edge of the system. The signatures matched those recorded during previous attacks by the unknown force. Whatever had destroyed the mining colony was returning, and the joint Confederation fleet was about to face an enemy whose capabilities remained completely mysterious. As the alien ships approached, Vexhai prepared to finally witness how humans responded to opponents who actually posed a serious threat to their survival. Everything he had observed so far suggested that humanity measured victory and defeat by standards that no other species could understand. Now he would discover whether their unusual approach to warfare could succeed against technology that outmatched their own. The alien ships emerged from hyperspace like death itself given form and substance. Vexhai had never seen vessels that moved with such predatory grace or radiated such obvious menace. Their hulls were jet black and seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, making them difficult to track even with advanced Korthak sensors. Energy readings from their weapon systems showed power levels that exceeded anything in the Confederation database. 12 enemy vessels arranged themselves in a perfect attack formation that demonstrated tactical knowledge, far beyond what most species possessed. Their movements were synchronized with mathematical precision, each ship positioning itself to provide maximum firepower while minimizing exposure to return fire. Whatever intelligence controlled these forces had studied Confederation military doctrines and designed countermeasures for every standard defensive strategy. Commander Jorvak of the Gorvani Republic immediately opened communications with the joint fleet. His voice carried the controlled tension of a veteran officer who recognized a superior enemy when he encountered one. All ships maintain defensive positions and prepare for coordinated withdrawal. We are outmatched and should retreat while requesting reinforcements from the nearest Confederation base. Vexhai agreed with this assessment completely. The alien ships possessed overwhelming technological advantages that made direct combat extremely dangerous. Standard military doctrine called for gathering intelligence about enemy capabilities before engaging in battles that could not be won. Retreat was not cowardice but tactical wisdom when facing unknown opponents with superior force. The human response defied every principle of rational military decision-making. Commander Taeho Shin's voice cut across all communication channels with words that sent cold shock through Vexhai's consciousness. Human fleet will advance to engage the enemy immediately. All Confederation forces are advised to maintain safe distance and observe our tactical approach. Commander Shin, Vexhai transmitted urgently, those ships possess technology decades ahead of our current capabilities. Direct engagement would be suicide for any force our size. The human commander's reply carried the same calm certainty that had unsettled Vexhai during their previous conversations. We understand the odds. Humanity will demonstrate our commitment to protecting Confederation interests regardless of personal cost. Stand by to provide support if opportunities arise. What followed challenged everything Vexhai believed about military science and rational behavior. The human ships accelerated directly toward the alien formation without hesitation or preliminary maneuvering. Captain Hyunwoo Nam's destroyer Soul Defender led the charge, followed closely by Captain Soyeon Jung's Busan Protector and Commander Taeho Shin's cruiser Incheon Guardian. They approached certain death with the same matter-of-fact determination other species showed when reporting for routine duty assignments. The alien weapons opened fire with devastating precision. Energy beams that cut through space like violet lightning struck the human ships and should have destroyed them instantly. Instead, the human vessels absorbed incredible damage and continued their advance. Vexhai watched in amazement as Soul Defender's forward armor was stripped away by direct hits, exposing internal systems that somehow continued functioning despite catastrophic damage. Captain Hyunwoo Nam's voice remained steady, even as his ship disintegrated around him. Soul Defender to fleet. We have identified enemy weapon frequencies and defensive patterns, transmitting tactical data for use by supporting vessels. Continuing attack run until mission completion or vessel destruction. The human destroyer had become a flying wreck, held together by determination alone. but it pressed forward until its weapons could reach the nearest alien ship. When Captain Hyunwoo Nam fired his remaining missiles at point-blank range, the enemy vessel's shields flickered and failed for several crucial seconds. The window of opportunity lasted only moments, but it was enough for Captain Soyeon Jung's Busan Protector to exploit the weakness. Busan Protector engaging designated target, Captain Soyeon Jung reported as her destroyer dove through the gap created by her comrade's sacrifice. Her ship fired continuously, while enemy weapons tore through its hull, creating massive breaches that vented atmosphere and debris into space. Yet her crew continued fighting even as sections of their vessel were torn away by alien fire. Commander Taeho Shin's cruiser Incheon Guardian performed the most impossible maneuver of all. As the two destroyers drew enemy fire and created chaos in the alien formation, the larger human ship charged directly at the enemy command vessel. The alien ship was 3 times larger and armed with weapons that could have destroyed entire fleets. But Commander Taeho Shin showed no hesitation as he ordered ramming speed. The alien commander apparently could not believe that any rational being would attempt such a suicidal attack. The enemy ship tried to evade at the last moment, but its movement brought it into the targeting range of other human vessels. The brief distraction cost the alien formation its perfect coordination and created the opening that changed the entire battle. Vexai realized he was witnessing something that transcended normal military tactics. The humans were not trying to win through superior strategy or advanced technology. They were succeeding because they approached warfare with a mindset that treated death as an acceptable outcome, if it achieved their mission objectives. Their willingness to sacrifice everything confused enemies who expected rational opponents to retreat when faced with impossible odds. The alien ships began making tactical errors as their commanders struggled to predict the movements of forces that ignored casualty projections and acceptable loss ratios. Ships that had operated with mathematical precision started responding to threats that should not have existed according to their programming. The perfect formation dissolved into individual battles where human determination could offset technological disadvantages. When the engagement ended 40 minutes later, 8 alien ships had been destroyed or damaged beyond repair. The remaining 4 vessels fled toward unknown space, their crews spreading reports about human warriors who fought like beings already dead, and therefore impossible to intimidate or defeat. The human losses were equally staggering. Seoul Defender had been completely destroyed with all hands, including Captain Hyunwoo Nam and his crew of 96. Busan Protector was a floating wreck that would never fly again, though Captain Soyeon Jung and 30 of her people had survived in sealed compartments. Incheon Guardian had lost 60% of its hull and was operating on emergency power that might fail at any moment. Yet the surviving human crews treated these catastrophic casualties as successful mission outcomes. Commander Taeho Shin's damage report was delivered with satisfaction rather than grief. Mission accomplished. Enemy force neutralized with acceptable losses. Tactical data gathered during engagement will be transmitted to Confederation Military Command for analysis and future reference. Vexai found himself struggling to process what he had witnessed. The humans had achieved victory against technologically superior opponents not through brilliant strategy or advanced weapons, but through their willingness to accept destruction rather than retreat. They measured success by entirely different standards than every other species in the galaxy. As rescue operations began and the joint fleet assessed the aftermath of the battle, Vexai realized that his fundamental understanding of power and weakness had been shattered. The humans were not strong because they possessed advanced technology or superior numbers. They were terrifying because they valued objectives more than their own survival. For the first time in his 3 centuries of military service, Vexai felt genuine fear stirring in his consciousness. Not fear of death or defeat, but fear of what it might mean to fight alongside beings who considered dying for their allies to be normal operational procedure. The galaxy had changed forever, and Vexai was beginning to understand that humanity represented a force more dangerous than any weapon ever created. The journey back to Confederation space gave Vexai time to review everything he had witnessed during the battle against the unknown aliens. The tactical recordings played again and again on his personal display screen, while he tried to understand how human forces had achieved victory against such overwhelming odds. Each viewing revealed new details that challenged his understanding of military science and rational behavior. Captain Hyunwoo Nam had charged directly into enemy fire that should have vaporized his ship instantly. Instead of retreating when his vessel took catastrophic damage, he had used his dying destroyer as a weapon to create opportunities for his allies. The final transmission from Sol Defender showed the captain calmly, reporting tactical information even as his bridge exploded around him. Captain Soyeon-jung had followed her comrade into certain death without hesitation or visible emotion. Her destroyer had absorbed enough damage to destroy 3 normal vessels, yet she had continued fighting until her weapons could no longer function. When rescue teams reached the survivors in Busan Protector's sealed compartments, they found crew members discussing how to improve their tactics for the next engagement. Commander Taiho Shin had attempted to ram an enemy vessel 3 times larger than his own cruiser. The maneuver should have been pure suicide, but somehow it had created the confusion that allowed human forces to exploit weaknesses in the alien formation. His willingness to sacrifice his ship and crew for tactical advantage defied every principle of command, responsibility that Vexhai had learned during centuries of military training. Unable to reconcile what he had observed with established military doctrine, Vexhai began studying human history through Confederation databases. The records revealed information that explained everything and terrified him more than any enemy weapon he had ever faced. Humanity had spent thousands of years locked in constant warfare with their own species. Their homeworld had witnessed conflicts that made galactic battles seem like minor disagreements between civilized beings. Humans had developed weapons capable of destroying their entire planet and had come within moments of using them during several different crises. Their military traditions had been forged in struggles where defeat meant complete extinction. Unlike most species who fought for territory or resources, humans had waged wars for the right to continue existing. This history had produced combat doctrines unlike anything else in the galaxy. Human military units carried names that reflected their philosophy of warfare. The Death Brigade, the Last Stand Division, the No Retreat Regiment. These were not ceremonial titles or propaganda slogans, but operational doctrines that shaped every aspect of their military culture. Soldiers were trained from childhood to value mission success above personal survival. Their literature celebrated individuals who chose death over surrender. Stories about warriors who fought impossible odds and died protecting others were considered essential reading for human children. The concept of accepting defeat to preserve lives was treated as the ultimate failure of duty and honor. Most disturbing of all, humans spoke casually about concepts like martyrdom and sacrifice as though such extremes represented normal tactical options. Their training manuals included detailed instructions for conducting suicide attacks, ramming maneuvers, and last-stand defenses. What other species considered emergency procedures, humans treated as standard operational techniques. Vexhai shared his discoveries with Admiral Korath during their next communication session. The Admiral listened to the report with growing unease as the implications became clear. "You are suggesting that humanity approaches warfare with a mindset that treats death as preferable to retreat," Admiral Korath said carefully. "Not just preferable," Vexhai replied. "Essential. They measure victory by whether they accomplished their objectives, not by whether they survived the battle. This explains how they defeated criminal organizations that had survived attacks by much larger forces. The pirates retreated when casualties became unacceptable, but humans simply continued fighting until their enemies were eliminated." The Admiral was quiet for several moments while processing this information. "Such an approach would be effective against opponents who value their own survival," he finally said. "But it would also result in the eventual extinction of any species that adopted it permanently. That may be the most disturbing aspect," Vexhai continued. "Humanity survived their violent history precisely because they developed this mindset. They became too dangerous for any enemy to completely destroy. Their willingness to accept mutual annihilation rather than submit to conquest protected them from threats that eliminated other civilizations. As if summoned by their discussion of existential threats, emergency signals began broadcasting across all Confederation communication networks. The alert messages carried priority codes that Vexhai had never seen used outside of military exercises. Something was approaching from the galactic core that posed a threat to every member species of their alliance. Long-range sensor networks had detected a massive fleet emerging from unexplored regions where no known civilization had ever established territory. The ships were larger than anything in Confederation space, and moved in formations that suggested military organization beyond anything previously encountered. Initial estimates suggested the approaching force included over 1,000 vessels of unknown design and capability. More disturbing than the size of the alien fleet was the pattern of their advance. Every star system in their path had gone silent after the unknown ships passed through. Research stations, mining colonies, and trading posts had simply stopped transmitting without sending distress signals or requests for assistance. Whatever was approaching seemed capable of eliminating entire civilizations without leaving witnesses to report what had happened. The Confederation Council called an emergency session to address the crisis. Representatives from every member species gathered to discuss how their alliance should respond to this unprecedented threat. The debate quickly revealed fundamental disagreements about appropriate strategies for dealing with enemies whose capabilities remained completely unknown. Conservative voices argued for defensive preparations and diplomatic attempts to establish communication with the approaching force. Military experts suggested concentrated fleet deployments in fortified star systems, where superior numbers might offset technological disadvantages. Several species recommended evacuation protocols that would preserve their populations by retreating to remote regions where the alien fleet might not follow. The human representative, Admiral Minji Kang, listened to hours of debate before requesting permission to address the council. When she spoke, her words carried the same calm certainty that Vexai had heard from other human commanders facing impossible odds. Humanity has reviewed the available intelligence about this approaching threat, Admiral Minji Kang said. We believe diplomatic solutions are unlikely to succeed against forces that eliminate entire populations without attempting communication. Defensive strategies will fail against technology that can destroy fortified positions without sustaining significant casualties. The council chamber fell silent as delegates waited for the human proposal. Vexai found himself holding his breath, knowing that whatever Admiral Minji Kang suggested would reflect the mindset that had made humanity both invaluable and terrifying as allies. Humanity recommends immediate, offensive action, the Admiral continued. We will advance to meet this threat as far from Confederation territory as possible. Our objective will be to engage the enemy fleet and gather tactical intelligence about their capabilities, regardless of the cost to our own forces. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Representatives from dozens of species began speaking simultaneously, their voices creating a din of protest and disbelief. The human proposal was clearly suicidal by any rational analysis. 1,000 enemy ships would easily destroy any force the Confederation could deploy against them. Yet Vexai found himself considering the logic behind Admiral Minji Kang's strategy. If the approaching aliens intended to eliminate every Confederation civilization, then eventual confrontation was inevitable. Fighting them before they reached populated star systems might provide crucial information that could save billions of lives, even if the forces gathering that intelligence were completely destroyed. For the first time since joining the Confederation military, Vexai faced a decision that would determine not just his own survival, but the fate of every species he had sworn to protect. The Nexus cluster represented the last line of defense between the approaching alien armada and the heart of Confederation space. 37 star systems containing billions of lives lay behind this strategic choke point, where space lanes converged into easily defended passages. If the enemy fleet broke through here, nothing could prevent them from reaching every major Confederation world within weeks. Vexai stood on the bridge of his flagship Eternal Warrior, watching the human fleet arrange itself in battle formation at the center of the defensive line. Admiral Minji Kang had positioned her forces exactly where enemy fire would be most concentrated, accepting the role that would result in the highest casualties. The human fleet included every military vessel their colonies could provide, from massive battleships to tiny fighters crewed by volunteers who had never seen combat. Around the human core, ships from other Confederation species had taken positions that should have been safer, according to traditional tactical doctrine. The Gorvani fleet maintained long-range firing positions where their advanced weapons could engage enemies without exposing themselves to return fire. Zilithian vessels used their superior technology to establish overlapping defensive fields that could protect multiple Allied ships. Simultaneously, the Korthak battle group under Vexhai's command had been assigned to provide mobile support wherever the enemy assault concentrated its force. It was a position of honor that recognized Korthak military expertise, while allowing them flexibility to respond to changing tactical situations. Yet as Vexhai studied the human formation, he realized that Admiral Minji Kang had placed her people in the position where they would bear the worst of whatever was coming. Long-range sensors detected the approaching enemy fleet 2 hours before visual contact became possible. The alien armada was even larger than initial reports had suggested. Over 1,500 vessels moved in perfect coordination toward the Nexus cluster, their formations displaying tactical sophistication that surpassed anything in Confederation experience. Energy readings from their weapon systems showed power levels that could crack planetary surfaces. All ships maintain assigned positions and engage according to predetermined fire patterns. Admiral Minji Kang's voice carried across the combined fleet communication networks. Today we defend everything our civilizations have built over thousands of years. The cost will be high, but the alternative is the extinction of everyone we have sworn to protect. Vexhai felt something stirring in his consciousness as he listened to the human admiral's words. It was not the familiar anticipation of battle, or even concern about tactical challenges. Something deeper and more disturbing was awakening in his mind as he contemplated what the next few hours would bring. The alien fleet entered weapons range. Without attempting communication or offering terms for surrender, their ships opened fire immediately with weapons that turned space itself into a storm of destructive energy. The first volley should have destroyed everything in its path. But the human fleet had somehow anticipated the attack patterns and adjusted their formation to minimize damage. Admiral Minji Kang's flagship, Seoul's Honor, absorbed direct hits that penetrated its armor and caused massive internal explosions. Instead of withdrawing to assess damage, the Admiral ordered her ship closer to enemy vessels so that its weapons could reach targets through the overwhelming defensive fire. Her communications remained calm and professional even as sections of her ship were torn away by alien weapons. Seoul's Honor to all vessels. Admiral Minji Kang transmitted as her bridge filled with smoke and sparks. Enemy defensive patterns identified and transmitted to fleet tactical computers. Continue advancing until mission completion regardless of individual ship status. What followed defied every principle of survival that had governed warfare since the first sentient beings learned to fight each other. Human ships pressed forward into concentrations of fire that should have vaporized them instantly. When their shields failed, they relied on armor. When their armor was breached, they continued fighting with damaged weapons and failing life support systems. Captain Daehyun Park's destroyer, Gwangju's Pride, lost propulsion and life support, but continued firing its remaining weapons until enemy return fire finally silenced its guns. Captain Yunwoo Kim's cruiser Jeonju Guardian suffered a direct hit that split the ship in half. Yet both sections continued operating independently until their crews could no longer maintain minimal functionality. Then something unprecedented happened that changed the nature of the entire battle. As Vexhai watched human ships sacrifice themselves to protect allies they had known for less than 2 years, he felt an emotion he had never experienced in 3 centuries of military service. Fear. Not fear of death or pain, which were concepts that had never troubled a Korthak warrior. Not fear of defeat, which was simply another tactical consideration to plan around. Vexhai experienced the terrifying realization that he might not be worthy of fighting alongside beings who valued honor more than survival. The humans around him were dying for species they barely knew, accepting annihilation rather than retreat from positions that protected Confederation worlds. They fought not because they expected to win, but because some things were worth dying for. Their courage was so absolute that it made every other consideration seem petty and selfish. For the first time in his life, Vexhai understood genuine fear. The fear of falling short of a standard set by allies who had redefined what it meant to be brave. All Korthak vessels. Vexhai heard his own voice transmitting before he could analyze the decision. Advance to support human positions. We will stand with our allies regardless of consequences. Around him, his bridge crew responded with immediate obedience, but Vexhai saw recognition in their eyes. They understood that their commander had just ordered them to abandon safe tactical positions and charge into the deadliest part of the battle. They followed anyway because they too had been changed by what they witnessed. The Gorvani fleet began moving forward as well. Commander Jorvak's voice carried across the communication networks with words that would have been impossible before this moment. Gorvani forces advancing to close-range engagement. We will not allow humanity to face this threat alone. Ship after ship from different Confederation species abandoned their assigned positions and moved to support the human advance. The Zilithian fleet, known for their cautious tactical doctrine, suddenly accelerated toward enemy formations. Morvek warriors who had planned to fight defensively instead charged alongside their human allies. The alien fleet, designed to face rational opponents who valued survival above principle, found themselves confronting an enemy that refused to behave logically. Their tactical computers struggled to predict movements of forces willing to accept destruction rather than retreat. Their commanders had no experience, fighting opponents who measured victory by ideological rather than material standards. As human ships reached the enemy formation and began engaging in close combat that should have been suicide, the alien fleet's perfect coordination began to break down. Individual ships found themselves isolated and overwhelmed by enemies who seemed to anticipate their every move. The mathematical precision of their attack dissolved into chaos as they struggled to understand forces that ignored casualty projections. When the battle ended 6 hours later, the alien fleet was in full retreat toward the galactic core. The Confederation had achieved an impossible victory at tremendous cost. 60% of the combined fleet had been destroyed or damaged beyond repair, with human forces suffering the highest casualties among all participating species. Yet as Vexhai surveyed the aftermath, surrounded by debris from ships whose crews had chosen death over dishonor, he knew that something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. The Confederation now included a species that would rather face extinction than compromise their principles. Standing among the survivors of humanity's shattered fleet, watching them tend to wounded enemies with the same care they showed their own people, Vexhai realized that he had been forever transformed by what he experienced. He had learned the most terrifying truth in the universe. Sometimes the greatest fear is not dying, but discovering you are not worthy of the company you keep. The other species would spend generations trying to understand how apparent weakness had become the foundation of irresistible strength. But Vexhai had stood with humanity in their darkest hour and learned that the most powerful force in existence was someone willing to die for something greater than themselves.